Well, good morning, and we are going to get started in just a minute. We'll let people who are going to be joining live with us, but if you're watching this later, we are in Proverbs, and we are studying this book of wisdom. We're in the 7th chapter today. We're going to get into the 8th chapter, and we are working our way through the first book of Proverbs, where we hear speeches that are calling us to wisdom. Some by warning us against the way of foolishness or even just simple-mindedness, and then to embrace the teachings of God, which are being communicated from a father to a son. Give us a moment, and how are people doing this morning? Good. Let's pray. Loving Heavenly Father, thank you for this morning, and give praise for your word. And you call to us, and your words are life, and you tell us exactly what you want for us, and it is all good. And so, Lord, as we have the opportunity this morning to hear your word, may it get into us. May we grow. May we become more wise. We pray for this in Jesus' name. Amen. So, do I have this right that we were into chapter 7 and we were starting to hear another warning about being seduced by an adulteress. And
I have 7:7.
So, one of the things to know as we go through this today is, so we've been hearing multiple speeches calling for wisdom, also giving warning. We were warned against certain types of men. Now we're being warned against certain types of women. It's the speech of a father to a son. There's danger out there. There's all sorts of different ways that you can be tripped up. I don't know how it's impacted you about kind of the focus on the adulterous wife, but this is leading to something, and that's the part where chapters 7 and 8, where we get two different speeches, are intended to be read together with a contrast. And so chapter 7 is the warning of a father about an adulterous wife and not coming underneath her sway. And chapter 8 is going to be Lady Wisdom inviting us in to fall in love with her. And this is a good choice for all of us. And the fact that it's Lady Wisdom versus the adulterous wife is a contrast of saying, okay, two types of, one literal but talking about another figurative, but there is a contrast of both their methods, their ways, and so we're supposed to read these together. So, first 5 verses, call of listening to the teachings, and choosing wisdom. And then in verse 6, the father then tells a story. And at the window of my house, I looked out through the lattice. Now, a little bit of historical context. We know a little bit about the way that homes were constructed then, and the interesting thing is that they tended to have 2 floors, a lower floor, and if this was like in a city, and this is picturing that sort of a thing, is that you'd have a place where animals would come in. It would be the working place. We know more about what this looked like because from archaeology we get the footings, and so we can see the lower floor. We're not quite so sure about the upper floor, But the upper floor is where this sort of lattice window would be. This is the place where you would kind of do your living, not your working. The Father is up there. And the picture is that he's looking through this window and he's looking from a distance because he is wary of this sort of danger and is not coming under. Here is something that is seedy. Here is something where you're walking into danger. And so, and there's going to be some things about this of looking at what happens. So first of all, we are told that this person, this young person, is a simple person. And this is, other people will say, other ways that you could translate, I think it's Resa, is gullible. And, but this becomes the part where when we start to look at Proverbs, we get different words. And what ends up happening is that you kind of get a spectrum. Gullible is somebody who is not wise, and gullible or simple. They are not wise. They haven't yet chosen wisdom, and they are in a place where they can be corrupted by evil, because they can come underneath the sway. But they're not choosing. So for example, you've got the simple, and then you can move forward and you move down, and then you get to somebody, for example, who's foolish. And a foolish person says, for example, there is no God, and they try to live as if there is no God, and their actions are evil and rebellious. And so when we're dealing with the simple, we've got a person, the Father's telling this story. He himself is wise because he's keeping himself at a distance from this sort of enticement and evil. But here goes the simple, just walking down the street, and they're walking down the street in the dark or in the dusk. And, one of the things that I told my kids, nothing good happens when you're on a date with somebody after 10 o'clock. This is, there's these things where it's just like you're just opening yourself up to temptation, so just be careful. So I saw among the simple, and I noticed among the young men, a youth who lacked judgment. And so the simple is this word for gullible, and then we're getting a description of it. He is somebody who lacks judgment. Not yet able to discern the good from the evil. He was going down the street near her corner. So see, the Father is watching from a distance, and he's looking at this unfold. And this is a slow crash unfolding, right? You're just, oh no.
Slow-mo.
At twilight, as the day was fading, as the dark of night set in, and then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent. She's dressed up. She's on the prowl. She's looking to devour. You're going to hear this. Now, remember that as you read this, here is a person who is bent on evil intent. They're married. And what we will find out is the husband is away, this person is desirous, and so they're going out to fill their desires, and they're going to break covenant and not be faithful and do what is evil. And so this is all a picture of what not to do.
So the dressed like a prostitute thing, is that kind of similar to today where they might be kind of provocatively dressed and recognizable?
Dressed like a prostitute, Christian, yes, it's provocatively dressed. They're dressed to entice. They're doing it out in public. This would not we're in the end, in Proverbs 31, we're going to get a picture of a faithful wife, and and this would be an antithesis. But but the picture is one of, and we're going to get a little bit more of a description as far as both the way that she's dressed, and then the other things that she's prepared.
So this is not for money. This is just for the act.
She's not a prostitute.
Okay, that's what it is.
She's an unfaithful wife,
Okay.
but she is
Dressed like one.
But she's dressed like one because she wants to seduce somebody because her husband is away.
Okay.
But warning with this: not everything that she says is trustworthy.
Shocker.
So that becomes something, and that's part of the lesson here is that, she's going to say things. Oh, it will be fine.
Yeah.
There won't be any consequences. Surely you won't die if you eat this fruit.
Right. That's why she picked a gullible one.
Now, and the crafty intent has the connotation of wickedness. It's bent. Shrewd, but bent. She is loud and defiant. And the loudness there is that it's not like she's shouting, but she's not doing this in the corner.
Mine says unruly.
Yeah, mine too.
Yours says unruly and what?
And defiant.
Yeah.
Unruly and defiant.
So I think loud's probably a better picture from what I can see as far as just kind of looking at. So there was a little bit of talk about trying to capture the idea, but she's going out on the street and she's on, I think this is a good description. She is on the prowl to find somebody to satiate herself. And she is not shy about saying what she wants to say. And the defiant part is that she's a wife, and yet here she is, and she's blazingly doing this. Now in the street, now in the squares, at every corner she lurks. She's out there, she's going about, this isn't hidden. And part of this is that, this is a story. It may be, this is the part where it may be true. It may be a summary of many types of things. This is a father. So, you look at it and there's actually a term for this. Like the picture that you're getting here is where, if you're putting this in historical context, for a wife to do this, it means that in some way the husband is ultimately finding out, right? And because if he's gone like she says he is, then it's going to be the part where he'll find out from all of the neighbors and everything like that. So now she's loud, defiant. Her feet never stay at home. Now in the street, now in the squares, at every corner she lurks. She took hold of him. This is the simple young man, and kissed him, and with a brazen face said, I have fellowship offerings at home. Today I fulfilled my vows. So I came out to meet you. I looked for you and have found you. Okay, so implication being, this is religious. I owe something to the gods, and I've already done this thing, and so now it's time to consummate what I've done, and I need your help so that I'm staying in the good graces of my gods.
Was that a thing for different other?
Oh yeah, for other religions that would be a thing. Now, it wouldn't be a thing of a wife cheating on her husband. I mean, that's typically been something that, and they warn, and we've already been warned of this, that, like, you're putting yourself in mortal danger. But there's also the lesson to be learned here that the devil, evil, people who become bent, we will use whatever we can to rationalize whatever we want to do. And so she has no problem thinking about the gods and then saying, well, here you go. So I came out to meet you. I looked for you and I found you. I have covered my bed with colored linens from Egypt. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh and aloes and cinnamon. This description comes up in the Song of Songs as well. Now, a couple of things, the cloth from Egypt, this is expensive, but see, this is the part. This is going to be wonderful. It's going to be luxurious. Now, remember that people did not bathe the way that we normally bathe, so smells were huge things.
Yeah.
Whew! But it's all taken care of. The bed is covered with exotic smells. It's going to be so good.
That her husband probably brought back from one of his trips.
That her husband probably, yeah. Her husband probably brought back from one of the trips. The Hebrew is provocative, similar to the Song of Songs, that, as she says these things, she's saying things with double entendre that, that when you drink and it's till morning, you're going to be drinking of me. And so this is, and so remember the brazen face just right out there, there's no embarrassment here. Come, let's drink deep of love till morning. Let's enjoy ourselves with love. This is going to be an all-night thing. So, this is religious. This is luxurious. This is going to smell good. This is going to taste good. This is going to feel good. And my husband is not at home. He's gone on a long journey. He took his purse filled with money and will not be home till full moon. There's no worries here. With persuasive words, she led him astray. She seduced him with her smooth talk. All at once he followed her like an ox going to the slaughter, like a deer stepping into a noose, till an arrow pierces his liver like a bird darting into a snare, little knowing it will cost him his life. And this becomes the part where the father now is speaking about the situation. You had the words of the seductress, and then it's like, she said everything's going to be all right, but it's a lie. This is actually leading him to death. Now then, my son, listen to me. Pay attention to what I say. Do not let your heart turn to her ways or stray into her paths. Many are the victims she has brought down. Her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is a highway to the grave, leading down to the chambers of death. Question? Sue?
Is this passage and this story ever interpreted or used as any type of temptation of planned and I don't know, as I'm following along, you can just almost picture the steps of other types of temptation that lead a person away from the way of truth, from the way of Christ.
So let me see if I hear kind of the question. So is this specific picture somewhat an exemplar of kind of the way of twistedness towards temptation and sin?
A blueprint.
A blueprint.
Yeah. It's very pictorial
It's very,
in a way, and involving the sexual temptation. It's very understandable.
Yep.
And very impactful, almost more than you would be trying to describe someone enticing you into wrong use of money or wrong use of other people that would take you into evil and eventually destroy you. But you could just follow the same steps of what evil does to entice you into something.
And the answer is, the observation is absolutely on target. This, the ways of Satan are kind of predictable. And so this is the part where, you can go to the story of the temptation by the serpent and it'll be like, okay, so first you're going to get a twisting of things. And then you're going to get a downplaying of the consequences. And then you're going to get a questioning of the goodness of God. And then you're going to get the commitment that's, no, this is going to be good. And in a similar fashion, this is the part where you're exactly right. Temptations work this way. And people will try to entice you. And it follows similar patterns.
Temptations are rarely, if ever, dressed up in horrible ways. This is the worst thing that's ever going to happen to you, but boy, maybe you should get in on it.
Right.
You're headed towards death, but hey, in the meantime, it'll be fun. It's rarely ever dressed up that way.
Now, and this becomes the secret as far as, so we're having a conversation, and it's a good one as far as temptation never, things aren't really tempting if they really look bad.
Yeah.
So they've got to look good. And then the secret of wisdom and the difference between somebody who's simple, who lacks judgment, and somebody who's become wise is that we see things more clearly. And so that, so then that becomes the part where, it's like, I said that this is my go-to analogy for this. I'm never tempted to stick a fork into a light socket. It's just like, that's a bad idea. I could if I make sure all the power's turned off, but that's just the part where it's just like, no, because I just know electricity's dangerous, I'll get hurt, bad idea. There's no temptation. The only way that you're going to get me to do it is against my will. And so that becomes something where, as we test and affirm what God's will is, His good and perfect will, and as we come to commands, and the commands tell us no, and we become absolutely convinced and convicted that God's way is good and true, then it won't be a temptation anymore.
Well, usually that kind of temptation is short-lived. You eat something because it tastes good, and then, or you have something like this happen, you get tempted, and that experience is good, but then it's gone, and it's like, well, and
well, and but some of it is we only have so much emotional strength, and there becomes this stuff where there's a place for willpower, but we don't want to just rely on willpower alone because we can run out of energy if it's just on willpower. So beyond willpower, it has to get into this place of sense of identity. This is who I am.
But what I'm saying is I would never be tempted to even want to put a fork in a socket, but I might be tempted to eat a plate of chocolate chip cookies because it's going to taste good for a very short time, but then the aftermath will not be good.
Okay, so never tempted to do this, but I would be tempted to eat a plate of chocolate chip cookies. One chocolate chip cookie is great. A plate of chocolate chip cookies is not great. And so then it becomes a part of, why am I not convinced that eating a place of chocolate chip cookies would really be bad for me.
Or anything
And,
that's just.
but see, there's something going on there where I'm still not convinced. And typically what's going on is that the things that we're enticed to do, they help say a lie that this is really making me feel better because something's hurting. And so then we have these things. And that's a part of us going, okay, I have to grow up and I have to be wise. And I've eaten too many plates of chocolate chip cookies, and the doctor says I'm going to die if I keep doing this. And
Or a person that buys the clothes, or something any kind of thing where you then you get it home and they're like, well, it was the purchase power or whatever you're using for a moment's pleasure.
But my point is that there is a place that we can get to where we won't really be tempted to eat a plate of chocolate chip cookies. And we could have one. So, from my own life, and this is really easy, I've never been drunk. I've never been close to getting drunk. I can drink a glass of wine. It's okay. But, there's some alcohol that I like to drink. I'll drink one. But I've never been drunk. And it's really not a temptation for me. I have no interest in doing it. I see other people do it. I think it's stupid. I know that you just make a whole bunch of bad decisions when you do it. So the only way that I'm ever going to get drunk is if somebody tricks me by forcing, or doing something where they and I'm still probably going to, but that's the part where it's like there's no temptation there. And it's part of it is because I'm absolutely convinced that there's just no good of over drinking and there's no reason to do it. And so I'm not, but that becomes the part where, but I have freedom. I can drink, but I just never drink to excess. But I'm not really ever working at that. So there becomes that difference where in that little small area of my life, it's pretty easy. But there's other areas where it's like, okay, I think I know the good, but sometimes I forget about it. And that's the stuff and this is where I was going back to, we need to move beyond just willpower alone. We need to move, we know that something's bad, eating a plate of chocolate chip cookies, going out and spending a bunch of money that I don't have and racking up credit card debt. Whatever, why am I doing it? What's going on? Why at this point am I really forgetting who I am in Jesus Christ? And there needs to be this sense of transformation where who I am in Jesus Christ is who I am in Jesus Christ. And we need help with that.
But I think the power comes from somebody that is tempted and then chooses not to do it. If it's not tempting to you, then it's easier. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it's when you are tempted and you say no, and that's where I think different people have different things, whether it's drinking or drugs.
We call that, an old language for this is everybody has their besetting sins.
Yeah.
There's the things that they're tempted in. But can we grow so that those temptations lessen? And I believe the answer is yes. But it's not just willpower alone. It is a transformation of the mind and the heart. And it is in part you coming to say, here's what's good. But there also needs to be a little bit more to that. And it needs to become part of the identity. We are people who don't do that. So, I didn't explain the story in depth on Sunday, but I had this experience this summer where somebody did something, and what happened was it hit me in my gut, and it was like this immediate thing where it's just like, this is wrong. I can't believe you're doing this. Their gut wasn't trained like my gut, so it was part of my identity. We don't lie over stuff like this. We don't do this. So, it's something where, it's an area in my life where that sort of temptation isn't going to have nearly the sway as somebody else. But part of it is because I have this deep sense of conviction. There's a certain way that we live as Christians, and so you don't do it. But if I don't have that real deep conviction, I might forget.
Right.
I might not have enough willpower at 10 o'clock at night as I'm walking down the street and I'm simple-minded. And so, and that's growing in wisdom, what we're trying to learn.
How is it that our kids who have been raised believers and who say they are believers, but they are practicing before marriage, they are living together, they are doing, and I identify with what you're saying, but do we just shut our mouths and not say anything? That's what I want to know.
So, what do we do when people say one thing and then they live another? They grow up in the church, they say they believe these things, but, and the reality is that they don't. They don't believe that. We all do it. This is the part where all of us are in this process of learning to trust Jesus with everything that we are. And there are certain areas of our life where we want veto power. I'm going to follow you, Jesus, except maybe not right there. Right there, and where we're seeing it a lot in our culture is right in the issue of sexuality. Because our culture is pushing and pushing and pushing towards immoral sexual behaviors. It has it believes that the biblical idea of sexuality is wrong and needs to be wiped out. And so there is a contest there. And that's the part where all of our kids need to go from really, being drugged to church to having their own relationship with God. And in that, it's going to be a process. And maybe I trust you over here a little bit, but I'm not trusting you with this because this feels really good, and whatever. So, how do we convince them?
You don't. You can't.
We hope that we can have influential relationships. And this is part of wisdom.
Well, and the worldview is different. So they got married when they were 14 or 15, biblically. And now kids go to college and they aspire to have careers and they're in their 20s and they're like, no, dude, I'm not waiting to be. And I agree with you, but I'm just saying that is what you'll hear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they've got their version of it.
But the thing I think one of the things we've learned is that we need to be having these conversations with them in middle school, some of them even before, slowly progressing up, because it's getting pumped into the curriculum in elementary school.
Yep.
And so it is quite the challenge.
The picture is a Bible. The caption reads, "This is not a bag of trail mix. You can't just pick out the pieces you like
Right.
and ignore the rest."
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. It's a good one.
Okay. Let me invite you to think about it, and we're going to have a conversation about this, because the purpose of Proverbs is really growing in the practicality of living well. And so we have this challenge. Okay, so how are we a positive influence? Especially the people that we're in a relationship with, especially the people that we love. How can we help them? Here, we have this where we have a father giving warning to his son, and now we're going to hear the testimony of wisdom itself. The one is, here's what not to do. Here's an enticement. Here's what to do. How do we bring this to people today? How would we bring it to younger people who maybe don't have such a clear conviction that biblical wisdom is really wisdom? Does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? Now, just think about the contrast of what we just read. You had the brazen woman bent on adultery. She had no problem speaking it like she wanted it. But neither does wisdom.
Is this part of lecture 10? Is this all part of lecture 10 or is this a new one?
This is a new lecture.
Okay, so this is 11 now.
This is 11.
Okay.
Does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights, along the way, where the paths meet, she takes her stand. Now, she's not low and seedy. She is an elevated path. But she takes her stand and she speaks. Besides the gates leading into the city, she has no problem doing it right in the middle of the public square.
So she's brazen.
At the entrance, she cries aloud. And then we hear. Now, this is personification, right? So this is a poem. It's telling us about wisdom. It's picturing wisdom as a woman that we should desire. And we're going to get a sense of her character. Now, one of the things about this is that there's a little bit here where wisdom. I'll wait so we can get into this because we might not get all there today and then you'll lose it. So here's what she begins with. Now, this is a long speech, and it's going to begin about wisdom sitting there and making promises about the benefits of listening to wisdom. And then later, we're going to get testimony about who wisdom really is. And so, first part. To you, O men, I call out. Now, this is the part of fall in love with me. And so this is the part calling out to men. You can take this and reverse it for women. Wisdom calls to you as well.
Mine says people. So.
Yeah, but the word there is men because it's a poem, right? And so it's, and it's intended to be read in that contrast. Here was this father speaking to the son, avoiding falling in love with the adulterous woman, or at least making sex. And I'm just going to say it craftily that way because it wasn't really making love.
Right.
But now here is wisdom, and she's calling to you because she wants you to fall in love with her. Now, this falling in love, this passion, this desire. 2 weeks ago in a sermon, hold on to truth. With passion and perseverance. Same sort of thing. I raise my voice to all mankind. Now, the all mankind there, all humankind. And so that's where you get the one part. Here's the metaphor. This is the call to everyone. You who are simple, the gullible, remember the person I want you to gain knowledge. I want you to become wise. You who are foolish even, and remember foolishness is even beyond simpleness. Foolishness is more morally corrupt. The fool in their heart says there is no God, and then they live as if there isn't. Wisdom desires to help all of us. Wisdom wants us to become wise. You who are simple gain prudence. You who are foolish gain understanding. Listen, for I have worthy things to say. I open my lips to speak what is right. Verse 7, my mouth speaks what is true, for my lips detest wickedness. So, the word for true there is emet. And this is a significant Old Testament word. Let's jump over to Exodus 34. Moses receiving the covenant, and then having asked to see the glory of the Lord. And the Lord says, you're going to go up and you're going to stand in a cleft in the rock, and then my glory will pass by. You can't see me face to face because you can't handle me in all my glory, but my backside I will show you. Now, he goes up there, and then what gets revealed is the name of the Lord being proclaimed. And so in 34:6, the Lord himself from the cloud proclaimed his name, the meaning of Yahweh, and passed in front of Moses. Yahweh, Yahweh, compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. Now, this is the definition of who God is in the Old Testament. And compassionate and gracious, abounding in love. The word there for love is hesed, which is covenant, loving kindness. And then emet, the word that gets translated truth in our Proverbs passage. That which is true is faithful and reliable. You can stand on it. This is the nature and character of God. What wisdom speaks is that which is true, that which is reliable. It is the very nature and character of God. Those become the things of what we sometimes miss in translation. That here we have this word, and it's at the very heart of understanding who God is. And what we're being invited into in wisdom is the character of God being formed in us. And it's who he is all the way through. And so what he speaks is faithful, reliable, it's true. You can stand on it. So my mouth speaks what is true, for my lips detest that which is bent, which is wicked. All the words of my mouth are just. They're righteous. They go the right way. None of them is crooked or perverse. To the discerning, all of them are right. They are faultless to those who have knowledge. Choose my instructions instead of silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can compare with her. And so here's this opening call, wisdom. She speaks clearly. She speaks out. She says, here's what I offer. And what I offer is the best. And so choose it. Here's an interesting thing. I invite you as we're thinking about this, of how to help people understand that biblical revelation is good and true versus the things that the world may corrupt them towards, and why should we choose biblical. So some of it is going to be that it works. Here was an interesting thing. I was listening to a commentator talk about this, and the simplest remedy out of poverty?
Work?
Well, work. But it's lifelong marriage. And it was a contrast of, in our society, the wealthy, most of them, celebrities is a little bit dicey, but most of the people who are wealthy are stay married and they are married. But they're more than supportive of a culture that just makes free sex the way it goes. And so it was just this thing of an article just commenting, they actually push and promote, but they don't live it. Because what they live leads to them, but they don't, and this becomes the part where there's a part where it's just like, life is hard, it's difficult, but if you listen to what scriptures say and you do it, it will help you through. Not guaranteed, this again is general wisdom and stuff like that. Eschatologically, it's absolutely, sorry about that. In the light of eternity, when Jesus comes back, you will never ever regret having put your faith in Jesus. But sometimes it doesn't always go well here, and we suffer, and there's hardships and stuff like that. But generally speaking, having a good work ethic over being remember the word sluggard?
Yeah.
Having a good work ethic. The ant who gets up and toils and does all of that stuff, life's going to go better. Not committing adultery is going to go better. Not sleeping around is going to go better. So, that's the first part. It's more precious than gold or rubies or silver. Verse 12, I, wisdom, dwell together with prudence. I possess knowledge and discretion. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior, and perverse speech. I hate evil because I see it for what it is. I don't hate people, but I hate the evil that they do, but I hate the evil that is done to them. And this goes back a little bit to what we heard in Revelation about tolerance. Tolerating evil is not a virtue. Tolerating evil and letting it have its way with people is not a good thing. I hate it. I'm against it. And we have to be willing to fight against it. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. The fear of the Lord is one of the staple descriptions of Old Testament spirituality. And remember, the fear of the Lord is Yirach Yahweh. It's hard to translate. It's reverence is probably our closest thing in trying to capture it. But there's a feeling aspect to it, and it feels a little bit like terror, except I absolutely know that he's good. And so, like, probably one of the better analogies is what C.S. Lewis does with Mr. Beaver about Aslan's a lion. Well, is he a tame lion? And he's not tame, but he's good. And, but the fear of the Lord is going to be the hating of evil. If I respect Yahweh, I will hate it. I will not compromise with it. I will not play games about it. I will not be participants with it. Counsel and sound judgment are mine. I have understanding and power. And now, this is the part where, wisdom is describing herself so that we want her. And so now we're going to get the fact that, especially in the ancient world, there was an understanding of hierarchy. And kings sat at the top. So goes the king, so goes the people. And good kings, well, who wouldn't want to be like that? And so, here's wisdom. By me kings reign, and rulers make laws that are just. By me princes govern, and all nobles who rule on the earth. We're getting different words to describe the reality of people who are at the top of the heap. But the people who stay at the top of the heap, and they do this well, they are wise. The word for rulers there could be translated potentates You know, and it has the sense of gravitas. You know, somebody who's weighty. They have power, but they exude power. The reason that they do that is because they pursued wisdom. Now, no human is perfectly wise, but there you go. I love those who love me, and those who seek me find me. Any echoes of Jesus' words?
Yeah, exactly.
With me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and prosperity. My fruit is better than fine gold. What I yield surpasses choice silver. I walk in the ways of righteousness along the paths of justice. Bestowing wealth on those who love me and making their treasures full. And so this is the first part of wisdom's self-description. It's broken down into two parts. The first part is that first section where we hear about the pursuit of wisdom, its goodness, its better. And then in the second part, another section really comparing the fact that if you want to be like the people who have power and do it well, if you want to have influence, if you want the best of life, if you want riches and significance, then you're going to pursue wisdom. And if you do, even if you're not a king, if you love me, I will love you, and you will have prosperity, life, wealth. Now, all of this again is Old Testament wisdom. It's generally true. And we have to read this in light of New Testament wisdom. Worldly wealth is not the most important thing. Store up for yourself treasures in heaven, and not things on earth. But God doesn't want us to suffer unnecessarily. So, how am I doing on time?
You have 7 minutes.
7 minutes. Okay, let's keep going. Now, in this next section, we are going to hear about wisdom's background. The first section, you could describe it in part as wisdom's present impact. Like contemporary, this is what happens. But let me tell you about wisdom's past, where wisdom comes from. And this is the part where there's a couple of things with this where our culture has shifted a little bit from pretty much every other culture. So our culture is addicted to that which is new, where ancients really respected things that had longevity and came from of old. So just realize that as we start to read this, is that wisdom here, what else do you compare her to? Yahweh, the Lord, brought me forth as the first of his works. Before his deeds of old, I was appointed from eternity, from the beginning, before the world began. When there were no oceans, I was given birth. When there were no springs abounding with water, before the mountains were settled in place, before the hills, I was given birth. And so we're told about wisdom's origins. Wisdom is of old. Wisdom is right there alongside the Creator. Praising, celebrating, looking at his works, we'll hear that. So, this is, from their cultural perspective, this is prestigious. So this is This is like, okay, yeah, well, we get it in the sense of sometimes, you got classics, right? And there are certain things, and it's like, oh, okay, well, wisdom is before all of that. Before he made the earth or its fields or any of the dust of the world, I was there when he set the heavens in place, when he marked out the horizon on the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above and fixed securely the fountains of the deep, when he gave the sea its boundary so the waters would not overstep his commands, and when he marked out the foundations of the earth. Then I was the craftsman at his side. Now, just so you know, in verse 30, other people translations, what do you have?
Constantly.
Constantly.
Yes.
Constantly. What else do people have?
Constantly. I have a footnote that says, or was the artisan, or was a little child.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the part where so this is a poem about wisdom spoken by Solomon. We believe it's inspired. That's telling us about the character of wisdom, and is telling us about that wisdom was right there alongside God. Now, there's been lots of reflections on this through history about, okay, so what is this saying? Now, in the short, and you have some people, and this is the part where Old Testament wisdom is maybe the closest analogy that we have to Christ in the New Testament, who is the Logos. But wisdom is a created thing, it's not the creator. But in the poem, it tells us that wisdom is something that, probably the best translation is the idea that the Lord begat, but not in the same sense of Jesus, who was begotten, which, and the term monogenes, which gets translated only begotten, that word is built on a Hebrew word, and the idea in the focus is not on the begottenness, it's focused on the unique relationship. In a similar way, what this poem is trying to do is to say, wisdom isn't like a servant. Wisdom is more like a child in relationship to God. It's not a child, it's something, but it's coming, it's in this sense that wisdom is this thing, a personified thing that you can pursue, and it's synonymous with fear of the Lord. And so in all of this, it's a characteristic that can be described of us. It's not that you're becoming God. It's not that this is God dwelling in you. It's not His Spirit. But this characteristic is something that you were made for, because it is something that is of God. So this is a poem. It's sometimes been used a little bit more to try to think about the nature of being in God and all of that stuff, and you're kind of over-interpreting at that point. So in this sense, what you want to do is you want to listen to this poem, and you want to get the impression that it's making you of just how significant wisdom is. And then it becomes, there's a little bit where this word for craftsman, and then what do other people have? Constantly. This is one where translators are struggling on knowing exactly how to communicate this. And in one part we could say craftsman, but then it could have the idea of the creator, and then it starts you create something. And so for me, I felt like the best description that I had was something a little bit more than constantly. What does it say besides constantly?
It says that then I was constantly at his side.
And what verse 30?
That's 10.
Ralph, what does yours say when you read it?
What does yours say, Ralph?
Chapter 8, verse 30. This is the older NIV from 1984. Then I was the craftsman at his side.
Maybe the relation. The relationship is so unique, you can't compare it to anything else.
Well, no, so this is a part where the idea was constantly celebrating at his side. That you understood what he was doing and you were and you were saying, praise God.
Because if it's artisan, it sounds like he was wisdom, she was part of the...
Right, and that's so this is the part where this is the part where I'd say we're dealing with poetry that's trying to give an impression of things, and it's trying to tell you that wisdom is from of old, not the creator, but before anything else was created, wisdom was brought forth, and wisdom was right there and affirmed all that the creator was doing, so.
The Strong's Concordance says it's an artificer, architect, master workman.
There you go, I've got it in my little book, it says master workman.
So Strong's Concordance, and this is the part where if you dig a little bit deeper into the commentaries, you'll get into debates over the form of the word, and there's different forms in Hebrew, and so this becomes the part where even some of them are trying to get a different connotation. So that's the part where I'm highlighting this for you, that this is something where don't build too much theology on this about trying to get, the word here is ontological, about the nature of the being, and all of this is compared to God. Just let it be what it is, which is giving us a description of the significance of wisdom that understood and was there from the beginning alongside before everything else was created, celebrating. And if you think about it that way, wisdom is a characteristic that we're invited to pursue, and that wisdom is you knowing the right thing, and doing the right thing, and knowing the right thing and doing the right thing at the right time, because you understand how life works. Wisdom was right there, looking at all that God was doing, understanding what he was doing, celebrating what he was doing, because wisdom understood, she understood the craftsmanship of the Creator putting everything together. To picture this, there is a difference between a fellow artist who watches somebody paint and somebody who knows nothing about painting. And, because the artist can see the way that they hold their brush techniques, what they're doing, and somebody who doesn't understand any of that won't see it because we won't know what to look for. And so this picture is saying wisdom was standing alongside, right there, all in the whole process, seeing everything that the Creator was doing and praising Yahweh because of his wisdom of what he was doing, and could see, oh, yes, this is beautiful, this is wonderful. It's a good picture, got that? Okay.
That's good.
That's better.
I was filled with delight day after day, rejoicing always in his presence, rejoicing in his whole world, and delighting in mankind. Now then, my sons, now this is the Father, we've heard. Now then, my sons, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways. Listen to my instructions. Be wise. Do not ignore it. Blessed is the man who listens to me, watching daily at my doors, waiting at my doorway. For whoever finds me, now this is wisdom now speaking again, but this is the Father interjecting. Okay, sons, listen up. This is what I want you to hear. Here's the testimony. Blessed is the man who listens to me, Lady Wisdom, watching daily at my door, waiting at my doorway. There is a doorway to go pursue. There is a woman that you should be looking after. It's not you going down on a dark night trying to, saunter down the street, wonder what's going to happen. No, I want you to get up early, and I want you to wait there, and I want you to be ready so that you can attend to wisdom when she shows up.
So does she
For
show
whoever
up?
finds me finds life. Remember
Does
that
she show up or do we seek her?
we're supposed to seek her.
Oh, okay. You said she shows up, so.
No, at the door. That's the imagery.
Got it,
You're
got it,
waiting
got
at her door, waiting for her to open the
Thank
door and
you.
go, oh, I see you.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to follow you. I want to be with you. Now, again, the contrast between chapter 7 and chapter 8. What ends with the one who goes with the woman bent on adultery? It ends in death. And so then here, but whoever finds me finds life and receives favor from the Lord. But whoever fails to find me harms himself. All who hate me love death. Any final questions on this? Okay. Lord, thank you for today and the opportunity that we had to hear wisdom's call. And may we be committed to this sort of life, to wake up early and to learn your ways, to have your Spirit form your words, your truth, your faithfulness, your goodness into our hearts and into our minds. Thank you for this passionate plea. Bless us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Prayers for Florida and